Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Wilder Ride, our listeners' lounge, a sidecast to our main podcast, where instead of looking at a Gene Wilder movie 1 minute at a time, we're actually breaking down the life of an interesting guest 1 moment at a time. I'm your host, I'm Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host, Walt Murray.
And Walt, before we get to a very cool and special guest, we're both right now, of course, these always come out a little later, we're battening down the hatches, getting ready for Fred to come up to Northwest Georgia.
Yeah, this is going to be a wild 24 hours for us. And ironically, my brother's nickname is Fred, so we've been giving him no end of crap the last few days. And but yeah, it looks like we're going to get beaten down pretty hard the next couple of days.
The one thing I'm glad about is we haven't had rain in a bit, and it was really warm. But on the flip side, I don't know what kind of wind we're supposed to get. You never can tell how much it holds together as it comes ashore.
Yeah, and I've got friends in Montgomery. It's going to go through there first, so I'm going to talk to them here in a couple hours and see what they're seeing. But I'm hoping it's not much wind. We could use a little bit of rain, but this could be one of those that goes either way for Atlanta. It could be a real nightmare, which we've had in the past, or it could be a lot of nothing.
Right. A lot of times we don't know until it actually shows up. And as we know, Mother Nature does whatever she wants.
Yes, she does, especially in North Georgia.
And you know what? When we think about it, how many named storms didn't they go all in at the spring? Like, oh my God, we're expecting 20 some named storms, 10 of them going to be severe. And yeah, well, we're struggling to come up with a tropical storm called Fred. I mean, we didn't even get to hurricane.
Somebody had even said that I don't remember what happens after you get to Z. I think you go into, I don't know, Latin names or something.
Alpha, beta, gamma.
Yeah, something.
They go into variants.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, but we haven't even come close to that. So
now I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to have that period of time where all of a sudden we get like 7 waves in a row coming in off the, the Horn of Africa or off the African coast there. And it comes across straight up and oh, here we go. Wave after wave.
Next week we have no power and can't record. Yeah, that would be great.
That would suck. Our audience might think that was okay, but for us,
yeah, a lot of people might like that.
Woo, a week with no show. Well, besides getting ready for some tropical storm weather here, how have things been with you? It's been back to school. We've been kind of 2 or 3 weeks in Georgia. I know the county went in a week and a half ago. The city went in last week. So this week we're recording is officially the first full week that we're a maximum traffic, maximum rush hour.
Yeah, and it has been maximum traffic. I live in Cherokee County, work in Fulton County, which is the same county that the city of Atlanta's in. And the traffic has just been horrible the last week and a half since school started. So I guess we're getting back to normal. I guess who knows what happens when we get shut down again. But as of right now, the traffic stinks. So Atlanta's back to being Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, we are getting it back to a lower than normal temps, which actually I'm okay with. We've had a very mild summer.
We have. In fact, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago that we had fewer 90-degree days than we've had in like 5 years. Yeah. So I'll take it. I'm good with that. So
the last week, I had a chance to fill in for nationally syndicated talk show host Eric Erickson. I'll be filling in again this week. It's a good thing there's nothing going on. I don't have no idea what I would talk about.
Yeah, if you're into politics, this is the boring season. Is what we call it.
What is there to talk about?
Yeah, it's too bad that regimes aren't being overthrown and countries aren't falling into chaos. And the interesting thing, as we're going through it this week with Afghanistan falling apart and U.S. troops withdrawing. A lot of people. I've been listening to a lot of different networks, and a lot of networks are kind of on the same page here that there's a lot of blame to throw.
I obviously said it tongue in cheek about nothing going on, but I will tell you, it's interesting when even some of the most protective media outlets out there, depending which side of the aisle you're on, are going, I have a couple of questions we might need to answer. And presser, nope, 10 minutes prepared speech, no questions taken.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a little strange right now when you're supposed to look to your leadership to lead, and that's their example of it.
Yeah, I think we have a time in our history where the leader, I mean, as much as I hate to say this, cognitively, he is just not in a great place. And I don't think he could take questions on a subject this tough. And he may be the one making decisions. I don't know. I'm a little bit cynical right now, but I don't think he's the one calling the shots here. And he may have called this shot. It was a bad call, no matter how you slice it. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 6 months or a year. We may see some things happen in our politics that we have never seen happen
never
before.
experienced. I have a feeling it's going to be a very tumultuous next few years. One thing I can tell you is even if he is calling all the shots, what I find interesting is the number of generals who have been all rah under the covers all of a sudden are saying, well, we didn't say this is how it was supposed to happen.
Right.
I think that's the thing we have to remember. It's not a why did the U.S. decide we're done. I think everybody agreed at some point we're done. It's the how, that's the problem. There was you create little benchmarks and plans that say we're going to pull to this level. And if everything stays calm, then we can go to the next. But if things start unraveling, you don't just keep going through with it blindly and say, well, hope it works. I mean, that's not really good foreign policy.
Right. And it has, the Middle East has been a mess as long as there's been a Middle East. And it's always a hard place to have good policy. But there are times when the decision making is just absolutely nonsensical. And we were going to have to rip a Band-Aid at some point, but there are ways to do it without, tearing the scab off too. So
well, look, the way I look at this, and I don't think a lot of people have this kind of information, and we generally try not to get into politics. We're not trying to pick sides, but it is a current event that's happening as we're recording that is being talked about worldwide. The Trump administration said, look, we want to draw down. We want to get out of there. Got down to about 2,500 troops. That was February of 2020. Not one American casualty during that and since that drawdown to 2,500 troops. You know why? We still had sky support. We still had drone support. We still were providing the Afghan army intel. When we decided to say, cut everything, we're done, we're not going to do that was just like, it blew up. Like they literally put a grenade in the middle of that room and said, okay, and done. That's not how you do it. The how here is what everybody's just either upset about or can't put their mind around. It's the how, not the why.
Yeah. And I will tell you this. I'm glad I'm not the one who has to make decisions and figure out policy when it comes to some of these countries. But when we elect people to make those decisions, they have to do better than what we've seen. And I mean, we're getting people killed who supported us and who were translators for, the State Department and the military, and they're just being dragged into the street and executed. And that's on us. That's because we have people making decisions who can't make good decisions.
And what literally breaks my heart, being a father of 4 daughters, you have 3, is hearing the stories that within the first few days of the announcement and everything starting to go sideways. This didn't just happen in 24 hours. It happened pretty quickly, but within days, women were being turned away from the universities where they had been going.
Right.
The country of Afghanistan, we're seeing a higher literacy rates among women, among children. They were seeing better opportunities. They were seeing the fruits of freedom and of the liberty that they were experiencing of being able to better themselves and live in a much more unrepressed society. And to be told, guess what, ladies, we're going back to status quo where you are nothing more than dressing to the men who are going to tell you what to do. That hurts me. It hurts me that we let that happen.
Well, you literally had women who were working in banks and teaching school taken out, put in burqas, and led away. Right. And you have to look at that and think, how do we let a Stone Age backward worldview driven army take control of a country that we spent 20 years shedding our blood for? It makes no sense. We knew that. I mean, okay, now you got me going.
Sorry. So, well, I mean, if this is a perfect bridge to our guest, so you finish your thought and I'm going to introduce her.
Yeah. I mean, it's the fighting season right now. In 3 or 4 months, all the Taliban heads to the mountains because you can't fight in 6 feet of snow. So if we had pulled back and pulled out then, we could have had a much better transition. We wouldn't have had all this repressive nonsense going on. We wouldn't have had women and children around the country go from being very modern to now living in the Stone Age again. And it was those basic decisions that have now stolen the basic human rights from people who range from, women and children to people with, alternative lifestyles and other things that we as a country want to show respect to and want to give rights to. And our pulling out the way we did, all those rights have been taken away from those people. And it is unconscionable that we did that.
Not literally, figuratively. We nuked every bit of gain we had done. And that's what
absolutely. Well, and we stole the lives from the people that we, when we told the people, hey, look,
who
we're
trusted
here
us.
Your life. They trusted us and we stole that back from them. And there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse.
But it just reminds me, and this is where we get to bring in our guest. I will set the table because, seeing my girls grow up in the world and where things can sometimes not be as safe as you hope they be, or you can't put your head in the sand and hope that just things are always going to be perfect in Pollyanna. I remember taking them to the range. I remember teaching them gun safety. So that way, if they were home alone when they were old enough to be left, so we could go do a date night, or if the wife and I wanted to go do some camping, but we were going to do like the staycation camping, still have to go to work, but instead of coming home, go to the campsite for a few days, that they would be able to protect themselves in the event of something really, really bad going on before police could arrive. And I think teaching and being aware of your own surroundings, about being able to be empowered to provide your own protection, or at least to not be fearful of the things you can do to protect yourself, is why I was drawn to one particular online social media maven. Her name is Kerry Slone. She goes by Stilettos and Shotguns on social media. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get the conversation started with our guest. Let's welcome to the stage, Kerry Slone.
Yay.
So I'm gonna have to pull out my inner Kanye. Kanye, I'm gonna have to interrupt you. I'm gonna let you finish, but I need to say something here. A lot of our problems today really could have been solved if we had just promoted pulling out a lot earlier to everyone.
Folks, buckle up. It's going to be fun.
I'm just saying that this, could have been,
when you don't want unwanted circumstances, you learn to pull out sooner.
You pull out, right? And this should be really the things that we're teaching our children in school.
Well, so let's get to it. Kerry, thank you so much for being with us and joining us from your social media world, using what I think sometimes social media can be used for good. You're trying to teach and empower and explain at the same time.
I'll be honest. Yeah. I'm kind of a jerk.
Well, it depends on how easily your feathers get ruffled. Like for me, I don't think so.
Yeah. By the way, I heard that there's a lot of, stuff going on in the world right now. The Assange trial is going on. Does anybody know that's happening?
I didn't know anything really about that.
Of course you didn't, right? Everybody's so worried about what they think they're going to distract us with Afghanistan. And I'm over here saying, what are they using Afghanistan that's even worse for American people? What are they using Afghanistan for to distract us? So,
we get to
just keep that in perspective, y'all.
We get to a point, and I say this a lot when I'm on radio. I don't want to be one of those tinfoil hat jump into onto every conspiracy theory, but sometimes the truth sounds like a conspiracy theory, and you have to sometimes figure out what is real and what's not anymore.
I had a really good a very dear friend of mine said something to me that completely changed my perspective on conspiracy theory. A history teacher, was raised, by, a Muslim family, not the militant, kind of thing, but young black man. And so and became a history teacher, just a really, really cool guy that just thinks so existentially. And he said, there is no such thing as a conspiracy theory. All of the information is available if somebody's willing to actually dig for it. And that completely changed my perspective on the term conspiracy theory, because he's right. He really is right. It's just a matter of to what layers are you willing to dig, to dig to get there. And that's true. That being said, I'm formally opening up all of my DMs to those of you that thought that I was crazy and a conspiracy theorist to apologize to me for all of everything over the past several years where I told you so.
I told you so. Maybe you just create a new channel, Stilettos and Shotguns. Hashtag I told you so.
Told y'all, but you wouldn't listen.
Well, before we go too fast and too far, we've got time with you. Let's go ahead and set sort of, we always start this when we bring a guest on for the first time and sort of level set for the audience. At what point, when looking back in your history, did you decide you had sort of a mouthpiece that you wanted to go forward with when it came to empowering women in a way that we don't want to necessarily say in a hashtag Me Too movement, right, but in the sense of you still can be controlling your own life, your own destiny, your own security, your own safety? When did that really start for you?
Well, and I would like to address it, and please put a pin in this because I am a conscious stream thinker and can digress down some rabbit holes, but I want to come back and address that Me Too comment that you made. But so in Washington State, to keep it super short, how many years ago now? 3 years ago it was midterms, right? So I guess about 3 years ago, we had a law passed here in Washington State called Initiative 1639. And if you're a gun owner or in the online gun community, whatever that means, at any capacity, you heard about it. It made national news. It was a really, really big deal. There were a lot of components to that bill. A lot of people, most people, in fact, focused on the fact that bill had redefined rifles to essentially define almost every single rifle, including some 22 bolt actions as assault rifles. And there were many, many other layers to it. We now have enhanced background check, all that kind of crap here. But the one thing that set me off is that form, that form that we sign that people think doesn't exist, that NICS background check form, the 4473. For those of you that aren't familiar with guns that are watching this, yes, we do in fact already have background checks. When you sign that form, it now gives Washington State the ability to look at your medical record. Oh, wow. Correct. So I'm a domestic violence survivor. And many years ago, I did what I was supposed to do and went to therapy for that. And so, of course, I have PTSD on my medical record. Now, here's the thing, and this is where I've kind of gotten into teaching about policy and understanding policy. I'm very good at reading policy. I understand policy. And what I want people to understand is when you see something, it's not just about reading the bill and understanding what's in a bill, because most people don't even do that. They just read the highlights or watch let's be honest, they're not even going that far. They're not even reading the summary. They're seeing the crap that people put on social media. But more often than not, how an individual or we, the people, are affected by legislation isn't by what the policy says, it's by what it doesn't say. And how they write it in order to open up all of these little, rabbit holes for them to go down to use this legislation that they write to be able to do all of this crap. So in this particular bill, so not only can they look at your medical record now, but there's no criteria written into this as to what they say that will be approved, not be approved. It doesn't say what medications, a lot of people take medications that are classified as antidepressants for other things. My girlfriend had a double mastectomy, breast cancer, and she had to take a pill for hormone regulation, something with that. And it was in that classification. And that's what made her mad. She goes, well, wait a minute, I couldn't buy a gun then? She didn't own one then. She does now. And I said, no, potentially, right? That's just it. They never structured that. They also didn't say how far back they could look. They didn't say anything about limiting it to, the way it's not written. They could look at my record every year. Interestingly enough, side note, of course, we knew this was coming. The next year, they passed a red flag law bill here, and that's a whole other rabbit hole for me with DV victims. But if you think for a minute that you were denied a firearm purchase because your medical record said that you were, not mentally capable of doing so, if you don't think that that's opening them up potentially for you to be able to, for them to be able to use a red flag if there's any call whatsoever, think again. So PTSD, obviously, as we know, if you're a gun owner, or even if you're not, those are the magic letters for, gun control. They love to use veterans, domestic violence victims, and children for gun control. So the issues that are surrounding this are huge, and particularly for domestic violence survivors. I spoke out about it and it went viral, and here I am.
Let's dive into just a little bit about what you're trying to say, because sometimes I feel like
Sure.
and this happens a lot in the radio world, and Walt and I talk about this a lot. We talk incessantly about the politics of the day, the current events. So we just assume everybody knows everything we're talking about. A lot of times, as you said, they're only reading the headlines or the summary or what's being told to them. You're basically talking about the backdoor way politicians have figured out to be able to grab guns from legal gun owners who have never been convicted of a felony or any kind of a crime. It's sort of like the idea of the Philip K. Dick. It's your pre-crime division. We are so worried based on your medical record, you are a potential criminal. You haven't done anything, but because of your medical background,
report-ish.
right? And
very minority report-ish, yeah.
And that's should be scary for anybody and everyone, because I don't care what side of the aisle you're from. Anyone could all of a sudden find themselves on the wrong side of a bad domestic situation or a break-in.
Absolutely.
And we're trying to tell people who have never done a thing wrong, well, you kind of got slapped around once upon a time and you're kind of maybe unbalanced. We don't want to trust you protecting yourself. I mean, that's a backdoor gun control, gun grab.
Yeah. And above and beyond that, the other layers of that, and granted, that particular law that didn't throw me into this, we kind of expanded into the conversation being a little bit more also including red flag laws, which tends to be a hotter topic, obviously, across the country that people are privy to. But, this also creates a situation where you're going to have abusers using this against their victims, saying that they'll red flag them, they already own guns. Or what really concerns me even more is that you're going to have victims not go get the medical, the healthcare, the mental health care that they should be getting for PTSD or depression or any of these other things, because they're afraid of having this on their record. Because of PTSD, not to make it, a long thing, but my brain, I don't know how much you know about PTSD, but your brain will literally rewire itself. Like the synapses, really, they rewire itself. So sleeping is a huge issue for me. And my husband's always telling me, go to your doctor and get some sleeping med. I'm like, I can't, right? I cannot do that because I'm terrified, well, at least in the state of Washington, because I'm terrified that anything, that's connected to that whatsoever could potentially end up preventing me from being able to purchase and consequently could potentially also end up with, possessing firearms. I'm a firearms instructor now. I become a firearms instructor since all of this happened. That would be a huge issue. So I approach gun rights from a different place, right? I get really, really annoyed. And I know that Alan follows me, so I know he's seen some of this. That whole shall not be infringed or all gun laws are infringements. Guess what? Spoiler alert. We know. Mm-hmm. We literally know what the 27 words say. If you're a gun owner, right? I'm done. And it means nothing to these people. They don't give a shit about that. But I figured out a way in to get people's shields down, to talk about it and to start introducing the conversation. I also am like Oprah with guns, like everybody gets a gun, right? Arm all the people, because it isn't my place to decide who's mentally fit or who's capable of, or you know what I mean? I don't, who fell in, well, who am I to decide whether they're reformed or not, right? I'm very much that person. So for me, in addition to that, it goes into that category. So I end up, I've come into a lane where my conversation tends to be really welcomed by the people that are typically not the traditional gun owner in America, right? They're more centric or even left-leaning. and if even if they're anti-gun, they stop and they listen, and they hear it differently, right? And so it goes from nobody needs a gun to, well, you're right, no gun law works, and but we've got to do something, right? It always ends with we've got to do something. But at least I've cracked that shell. And what I've come to discover is when you can become a resource and not an adversary, and don't get me wrong, like if y'all go follow me, you're gonna be like, man, she's a butthole. Like, what is she talking about being an adversary? I'm pretty combative, right? Because I'm not afraid of people or anything, and I know what I'm talking about. I don't talk about it unless I know what I'm talking about. It's not about being combative in those situations, right? There's a time and a place for that. And when you have somebody who's anti-gun, afraid of guns, particularly women, right? Because women are the future of it, man. Like you want to keep your guns, you better get to the women, and period, end of story. That's just the way it is. And anybody that really knows, they'll tell you that. And you get some of these women, particularly these left-leaning I call them feminazis, right? Because I'm actually a feminist, and that's a whole conversation. I know, Alan, why do you want to bring that up later?
No. I want to go down that path because...
Yeah, I know you do. I had a feeling you might. But when you get that side, right, that are anti-gun and stuff, and now you start talking about how this is affecting women and how patriarchally, is that a word, oppressive this is now, right? Now you've got, because it is, right? Gun control inherently is racist, it's sexist, it's misogynistic, it's oppressive. But but at the end of the day, this is the way they're not being approached, right? Because all they see is NRA, right? Mm-hmm. And with the NRA, and this is their perception. In fact, I've had ultra conservative MAGA, crazy pro 2A, MAGA nuts tell me, or not tell me, but were blown away when they found out I was not an NRA member, because they literally thought that you had to be a gun owner, you had to be an NRA member. And I had to think about that. And I was, but they represent, now we know if you're a gun owner, they represent less than 5% of gun owners in America, and arguably declining. But this is the perception, right? So I have to say, as somebody who's been in business for 30 years and marketing and educating about that, well played NRA and well played gun control advocate groups, right? Because they ran with that narrative too. So both sides have literally marketed the NRA as like the pinnacle of what gun owners are, or that's what you have to be. So the first thing that usually opens the door for me to be able to gauge these conversations, interestingly enough, is when they find out I'm not an NRA member or that I'm not a particular fan of the NRA. And then all of a sudden they'll listen, right? Mm-hmm. So the minute that you get a little bit of that opposition, right, because you're going to feel them push back, right? Because now you're messing with them, right? You're messing with their paradigm. Back off, right? And believe me, I want to go in for the kill, right? Because I'm pretty aggressive that way. But I have to back off. And when I do, the next time, sure enough, when I see them again, they're going to come back. The conversation will come up. One of them was in her late 50s, I should say, and hated guns, didn't want anything to do with the alt-left liberal, right? And I built this up for months and months and months. And every time she pushed back, I just let it go. Push back, let it go. Well, I had just come back from DC where I'd spoken on the Capitol lawn. And I told her I went, and I said, do you want to see my speech? Because I didn't speak to the gun owners. Like, we shall not be infringed, we need to fight. I gave them a reason different than shall not be infringed to fight in that speech. And part of that was describing what my ex did to me when he beat me up. And she got pissed. And she said, and you're going to have to beep this, but she says, I would have fucking shot him. And I looked at her just dead in the face and I said, would you? And she went real quiet because she realized what she said. And she said, yeah, I would have. And I said, now you understand why women need to own guns. And that was it. And she was ready to go shooting. So sometimes it takes a while to get to them. And so look, some of them aren't worth it, right? Pick and choose your battle, right? You're going to know the ones that aren't you, and especially the warriors in the comment section on social media, right? Mm-hmm. But understand that this is coming from both sides, right? Because particularly for women, because I deal with a lot of misogyny from the pro 2A side too. I get a lot of the, we need to arm all the women. All women need guns. First of all, nobody should own a gun if they don't want to. And it's hypocrisy for we as gun owners to sit there and say, everybody should own a gun when we get pissed when people tell us that we shouldn't. Right? This is about individual choice and liberty. And it's not your place to tell anybody else whether they should or shouldn't own a gun, period.
Exactly.
Which is how I approach my self-defense. Do I want a gun? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's not somebody else's choice. And I think that people are hypocrites, and it pisses me off when they say that. That being said, when I try to approach the Me Too conversation, when I try to approach the issues that domestic violence victims face about why they don't report, I constantly get barrages of, well, she must like it if she stays. Or I don't understand why she just doesn't leave if she stays, right? I get it constantly, always from the pro 2A side. And I'm like, you guys are being dicks, and you're literally the reason why we're having this problem, and they won't listen.
Right.
And I don't know if you follow my nonprofits page, you should, because you can go through there and see the comments. Sometimes I've actually taken some of them, they were so bad, and put them in, created graphics, memes with the quote with women beaten up, to show like how some of these statements are so angry. Oftentimes what you end up finding when you've been working with domestic violence long enough and you are a victim, you find it's the men that usually get really nasty are usually the abusers themselves, and they're the narcissists that are blaming the girl for leaving or whatever. That happens a lot. But at the end of the day, this is a battle. So I have to fight battles on two fronts, because Me Too is valid, right? Me Too is a very valid thing. Women don't report more often than not for a plethora of reasons. But ironically, from the conservative side, it's because these dudes and women, there are women too, that are literally setting us up to not say anything either, because they're victim blaming. But because they have in their minds the term victim blaming or shaming or rape apology, like all of those terms that were hijacked by that feminazi extremist side, and it is they will shut down and not hear anything that has to be said that's in the middle. And that's the battle I fight from both sides.
Yep.
Thank you for coming to my Kerry talk.
Sure. One of the things that and my wife and I started a podcast separately. We call it the Marriage Fit Podcast. And she basically said the reason she had to leave is because when it kept getting worse and worse and worse, and when it comes to physical altercation, you start thinking, I'm looking at my two girls, I don't need them caught in the middle. But she said, it's hard. It's hard. You don't want to admit to your friends. You don't want to admit to family. You don't want to admit that something's happening like that. Sometimes it's even embarrassing. You can't believe you're in that situation. So it's better to ignore it. So I totally get the premise. Well, and women can be, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. I would just say, I understand the premise of what the Me Too, but I think what we're going to discuss for a second is the difference between classic feminism and then the modern ultra. I don't know where it even sits, because to me, I've got 4 daughters. In my mind, if they can prove themselves capable of doing a job, then they are that's feminism to me. They should be given every opportunity to prove they are qualified. And if they are, they should be able to get the job, not immediately disqualified simply because they're female. That to me is typical classic feminism. Give them the ability to do what they can do, prove they can do it just like anybody else. And if they can, give them the job.
Correct. And yes, and I'll address that in a minute, but because I want to say a couple of the other things for your listeners to understand is that when you're dealing with domestic violence abusers, right? Abusers are narcissists, right? And so once she comes out about that, it is really difficult for a lot of people to understand or see it, because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah, on the outside. I
never would have thought he would have done that. But also understand that some of the other reasons she may not leave is they and these are classic, like this is literally textbook on the checklist, right? Financial control. Sometimes they'll threaten to kill the kids or take the kids or lie in court. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's women that do this too. In fact, as far as I know, my organization is the only one that actively speaks out for male domestic violence and LGBT domestic dispute issues as well.
Because that is a community that people don't really understand has a huge domestic violence problem.
Huge domestic violence problem, particularly male on male, but huge. In fact, the biggest part of the statistic on that is the gay relationships. But so that is, so there's lots and lots of reasons why people don't leave. And the other thing is, right, when somebody comes out, I get this one a lot too, is I want to help her, but she just won't leave. You can't. You have to wait until she's ready. It is a frustrating situation, believe me, because you want to solve it for them and you want to get them safe. You want to get those children safe, but it's not that simple, right? And I wish it were. Believe me, I wish it were. I deal with these kind of emails, phone call, whatever. Sometimes a few times a day. Last year there was a lot of them, obviously, because people were home with their abusers, but. So you have to be there. You have to be patient. Believe me, it gets irritating listening to it for a while. But then when she's ready, be ready to help her and understand that even then she still might go back.
Right. Well, and one thing I think that's important, and I'm sure you bring this into the discussion when you have it, is understanding your rights and understanding that just because your scumbag abusive husband says, I'm going to take the kids, the house, and all the money, that doesn't mean the court is going to let him take the kids, the house, and all the money. And
and maybe even where you live, because I will tell you, as a dad who won custody of his daughters, I was told very candidly, hey, I'll go to battle. You got a 1 in 4 chance.
Yeah. Men don't typically win. And I do get that. That is hard. So I also run this fine line. I know, Alan, you know this, following me. I'm a hardline constitutionalist. And it is, I am that person, and I take a lot of heat from this from women's rights groups, that I could watch him beat her and still support his right to a fair trial. Right? I'm John Adams style, right? I mean, kind of the whole thing. And I'm a big history nerd, particularly Revolutionary War history. But and that's hard for me, right? But we have to remember that as well. And so you can believe a woman, right? Me too, and still respect somebody's right to due process.
Right, due process. Now, that's the 2 words you cannot leave out of the conversation.
Cannot leave out of it, right? And innocent till proven, 4th and 5th Amendments, right? That being said, we have become a society where our judges have become politicized and have political ambitions themselves, and so they come in with these skewed, rulings and things sometimes that can put women in a bad place. So interesting little side note. But so I apologize there. I digress. So, you were talking about feminism.
Yeah, I want to circle around to your thoughts on what I consider.
Let's circle back to that.
Let's circle back. Alan. And when I say that, we actually will attack the subject. We won't just use it as an excuse to never come back to it again. I mean it as, like I said, I support classic feminism. I think, Walt, you feel the same way. We want our daughters to have every possible opportunity not to be prejudged.
Opportunity.
Right. No, not a guarantee, an opportunity. Not to be immediately dismissed simply because they've been prejudged. I don't want them prejudged. I want them to go out there and earn it. And if they've earned it, they should get it.
Right.
But then we've got the new kind of feminism that I think actually runs counter to that right now. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to hear your thought on that, because we're all in the same age. We're all the Gen Xers, and we have that sense of we have maybe the ability for nuance and understanding that there's more complexity and context. And I feel like the Gen Zers, they just look at either words or images, and then if it's offensive, it immediately is dismissed, or you have to cancel it instead of understanding the context.
So, look, our founding mothers, right? And I shouldn't even, I could really take it back that far, because Abigail Adams was our first feminist. And she's considered the first feminist in America. And man, that you want to talk history sometime, we'll do that, because that woman was way more brilliant than just remember the ladies. Like, oh man, she was something. But going back to these women in the suffrage movement, right? Stanton and Anthony and all the others. They would be so pissed right now to see women acting the way they're acting, right? They would be mortified to see this crap. But we're sitting in this position where both the like I said, I like to use that, and I'm not even a Rush Limbaugh fan, but he coined them feminazis way back when. And the anti-feminists literally have both created this situation that we're in right now. So first and foremost, let me say something and be very, very clear. Women, and I don't know of you women that need to hear this, but some of y'all need to hear this. Women are not fighting for rights any longer. We are not fighting for rights. We have every right a man has. Interestingly enough, it didn't come in 1920 when we got to vote, only a mere 100 years ago. It was actually in the 70s when we were able to have our first credit cards in our own names, right? So that's right in my lifetime. Like, this is right. This is how new this is for women. We are, however, still fighting for opportunities and not to be discriminated against. But ironically, it's because of the alt-left feminazi nut jobs out there creating the very situation that they say that they're fighting against. It's like, it's, kind of like the naughty little kid that needs attention, so they create they're naughty so that they get the attention that they want. That's kind of what this is with this this extremism, smash the patriarchy crap, right? Women are being treated this way because they're creating this extremist situation where people are not wanting to give women these opportunities. Now, that being said, the fact that the anti-feminism movement of women on the ultra-conservative side are not speaking up and not holding the line, they're letting this run rampant, and it's causing this problem. And case in point, this is going to be funny for some of y'all, especially the dudes out there, but Amy Coney Barrett, God bless that woman. And I know a lot of people are having a hard time with her right now. But, do you love her because you thought she was conservative, or do you love her because she's a real constitutionalist and understands the law? Right? She makes some decisions I don't agree with, but I respect the hell out of her because she is a straight constitutional. That being said, she took a hell of a lot of heat, obviously, for being a mother of many children when Scalia didn't, right? Because Scalia had 2 more children than she did, but all these feminists didn't say anything about that. So, that's BS. But a lot of people, and a lot of conservatives, they missed this. She was raked over the coals by the left, the feminist, the leftist extremism for wearing a dress and not a suit on the first day of her trial. But
not her trial, her confirmation.
I'm sorry, not her trial. Excuse me, her confirmation. I'm sorry, her confirmation. I'm talking court cases of her confirmation. So the anti-feminists were like, oh, I can't believe it. I'm like, y'all did this. Y'all did this because you didn't hold the line, because and it's literally an echo of what you see politically right now, right? Conservatives just sit back and they let all this nut shit go, right? All this goofy crap that's been going on, and this is where we are. And they're like, how did we get here? I'm like, you created this shit. So it's the exact same thing, only, on a micro level in talking about feminism.
Let me interrupt for a second, because I want to give maybe a more, I guess,
Walt's like, dude, man, I need a drink.
I've got one.
He's got one. I want to do maybe a more concrete example of what maybe I'm talking about too, and kind of get you to weigh in. Mm-hmm. So if a person, let's say the requirement for being a firefighter is being able to lift a 180-pound person out of a second-story window and carry him down a ladder, because they've determined through statistics that the average weight of an average adult is going to be 180 pounds. And if you are going to be pulling somebody out of a burning home to save their lives, you ought to be able to do that. That used to be the requirement. Now we're saying, no. The new requirement is, because we want more women to be firefighters, you only have to worry about lifting 100 pounds. To me, you are not benefiting women or giving women more rights or providing more of, quote, that feminist view with this new way of saying we have to make it easier so there can be more of you. That to me is self-defeating.
Yeah, yes, it is. Does that mean that there couldn't be other roles that these women could play? I think that's sure. Fair. Just like military, and we can talk about that in a minute with that as well. But no, I agree with you, and I take a lot of heat for that. But come on. But again, on the conservative side, right? Let me give you a counter to that. Is there's a lot of men. Well, women can't do this. I'm like, let me tell you something. I've seen some women that will flat out lay out a 300-pound man. Yeah. No, so but don't tell me that this. I'm not saying you. You know what I mean? But people are like, well, women can't do that on the conservative side.
But shouldn't the requirement be, if we truly believe in equality, shouldn't it be, if this is what you think is the minimum standard, period, then it's the minimum standard? Because I can guarantee you, I would struggle getting a 180-pound person down off of a ladder. I'm not as strong as other people. Right. That's not my forte.
No, and I 100% agree with you, and on that, absolutely agree with you. And and that even the military, right, is the whole women don't fight on front lines. Still don't, contrary to popular people think. Oh well, no, women are in active combat zones now, but they're still not frontline fighters yet. But it's not because they're women, as opposed to what the patriarchy, smash the patriarchy side wants you to see. It's literally because it is psychologically proven that a woman is going to hesitate if she sees a child with a bomb strapped to her, and she's not going to be as, she may hesitate and get her entire, battalion killed, as opposed to a man who will take that action. So, and that is a biological wiring of women, right? They've got countless studies on that. Now, are there some women that can do it? Probably. Right.
And there's probably some men who would not be able to at all.
Who couldn't do it. Right. Absolutely. And so I think that should be evaluated on that same level, my daughter, she's an amazing kid, right? I sometimes I look at her and go, man, I did this right. Which is why I stopped at 1, because that shit doesn't happen twice. So you don't get lucky twice. She's like, the way that she is just like, she's very like pro Ayn Rand. Yeah, it is I am my own responsibility, like John Locke kind of extremist stuff, right? I'm like, it's okay. I'm still your parent. I can pay for college. She's crazy about this. But she lit off and lost some friends over women, and because this whole thing, it came back up this year, but this actually happened last year before last, where they passed the bill that women are now supposed to require or have selective service, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry. I don't even know if it actually is fully done or if it just is one house or the other and it keeps getting tabled or whatever, because I don't keep track of the nuances of that. But she lost some friends over it because in my house, they're like, yeah, you should, right? You don't get to sit there and scream feminism and then turn around and be pissed because you now have to register for the selective service as a female.
Right.
Like that's not the way it works. Right. And a lot of mothers were really upset and fathers were really upset. Well, my daughter, like, that's the way it is. Right. And so I'm thrilled that women are now, or that's the direction it's heading. Like I said, I'm not sure where this legislation is, but it's come up the last couple of years. I'm thrilled that, that we're at that point. But at the end of the day, just to have that micro conversation, right, of selective service, who should be required and who shouldn't be, everybody should be, because that's what real equity is. And that's what real feminism is. I want
to correct that word. That's what real equality, not equity.
Well,
I use those two words very differently.
Yeah.
Because to me, equality means you have equal opportunity, which means you won't be prejudged. Equity means regardless of your capability, we need to fill the roles equally.
All people should have the same opportunity, but that does not mean that they should be given special. That's the same thing as men in women's field.
Absolutely. There are things I know I am capable of and things I'm not. I'm not going to go for the job that I am not capable of doing simply because I think I can get preferential treatment and get in the front of the line because of some other, rule or mandate or desire to create more numbers of men in that field. I can tell you right now, there are not a lot of male teachers anymore. Not nearly as many male teachers. Men don't want to go into the teaching field. Because
they're afraid of being sued for being child molesters, even when they're not. Like that, we have a cultural society that's created that situation, right?
Which is part of the problem. But honestly, I also know me. I know me in the current climate. I would not be allowed to teach in a classroom no matter how well I knew the subject material because I could not conform to the way they want you to teach today. I am not qualified to teach. Now, I could probably get a teaching job because they want men teaching, but I know I'm not.
Oh, they do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, it's just the opposite, right? That's where men are getting the preferential treatment and so on and so forth. So, but look, and this is, I actually teach a defensive mindset class. And I teach, and then I'm as a firearms instructor and I definitely use feminism in my classes and real feminism, or as you refer to it, classic feminism. And I tell these ladies, I'm like, look, your power is in being a woman. Women have literally been, and I mean that in the literal sense of the term, not the social media the definition of literal, the rise and fall of empires for millennia. Mm-hmm. There is a reason for that. So your power, ladies, isn't in smashing the patriarchy. Your power lies in your femininity because men are dumb.
That is true. We are
simple creatures, y'all. Yes. Ladies, stop trying to be equal. You're already superior. Do not lower yourself. Two men, you're above that shit.
Well, this could open an entire different discussion,
and this escalated quickly. But I mean, I can't, but not really. You know what I mean? But it's
no, you're right. But this goes. And again, we're not going to be able to dive into everything that I wish we could. We will have to just schedule you another time. But there are definite differences.
Everybody says that, but nobody ever has me back because they're afraid.
I'm not. there are definite differences biologically between men and women.
Yeah.
And I think that means they complement one another. And I think that is something that
Absolutely.
we need to, if I'm a man, I need to not only empower my daughters to be able to go after whatever they want, I have to understand that they're going to do things that I can't do.
Right.
And then vice versa.
And then you send them to me, and then I'll teach them how to like use that to their advantage. Because I'm like, that's my whole, I'm all about that goddess energy for women, and I teach that in my classes. But that's a thing, right? I mean, that's a thing, and instinct, right? The core of everything when you're talking about self-defense is obviously instinct. And I tell women that I'm like, look, your instincts, all humans have an instinct to survive. I mean, that's there, right? We do things to kneecap it, metaphorically kneecap it. But women, it is a scientific fact that women's is actually stronger than men's. And once she becomes a mother, game on, right? I mean, like when we become, not that our daddies aren't nurturers and givers, because they are, but women, it is scientifically proven that women are biologically rewired. Mm-hmm. And everybody goes to that mama bear thing. I'm like, nah, if you have ever seen a raccoon, I call them mama trash pandas because raccoons are nuts, right? Because bears are defensive. Raccoons will come at you like Mike Tyson. Like they will want to, like raccoons are nuts, right? And they're mean, especially mama raccoons. So I always like to refer to them as the mama trash panda syndrome, because they don't care, right? They will take you out, scorch the earth and use your ashes for fertilizer. Like they don't care. So we are biological right now. Ironically, our culture and sometimes the men in our lives and our friends, let's be fair, and our female friends, will also kneecap us, right? With that, oh, you're being paranoid, or oh, you're overthinking this, or you're just, you're being dramatic, and so that's a conversation that I have in my classes too. I'm like, look, we live in we as women, we as a society, but I think women, I feel like women probably see this a little bit more than men, where we're told to set boundaries. And I think this is a lot of the problem with our children too. See, I'm going to solve all your world's problems right now. I'm going to solve America's problems. So we as a society, because it kind of comes down to some of these things right here. We have this culture where we're telling people you need to set boundaries and your feelings are okay. And that you should be able to live in those feelings and be able to tell somebody no, and this, that, and that's true. That is all 100% true. But then we turn around and we live in this culture, especially with social media driving it, right? Because everybody is an asshole behind the keyboard, right? So they, it's, well, you're just being dramatic, or you need to stop being so sensitive, or you're being paranoid, or, any of this stuff. So we're giving people, and particularly our youth, two different messages, conflicting messages. But at the core of it, we're giving them the tools, which I think are important, right? Set these boundaries, right? No is a complete sentence. I tell women, you owe women, and that is a thing. Women we do kneecap ourselves with words more than men do. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to. And I taught my daughter, she actually, a teacher of hers, I'll never forget this, when the teacher had to apologize to her because the teacher we called her on some crap, and the teacher looked at my daughter and apologized. And my daughter said, thank you. And the teacher was waiting for her to say, it's okay. And I taught my daughter from 5 years old, you never say it's okay unless it is, right? Because the minute that you say it's okay to someone when they apologize, it is a subconscious, you're giving them permission subconsciously to act that way again. And so we have to stop saying that. It is okay to say, I accept your apology, or thank you for apologizing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I taught her that. So this teacher, right, because she was waiting to hear it's okay, right? Especially from a student, right? Because she's older. And respect your elders on this. No, that doesn't matter. You can be assertive and hold your boundaries, but we aren't teaching our children in society to do that. So we're telling them to hold boundaries, but then we're not teaching them how. And so it's creating all of this conflict with children, and not just children, I mean adults too, and the younger generation, and hell, some of our generations too. And don't get me wrong, I see some, about the boomer generation or whatever, some on this business too, right? Because it's all being cultivated and perpetuated by social media. But that's the conflict that's happening right now, because our interpersonal and intrapersonal skills aren't being cultivated as well as they should be. And I absolutely blame social media. Lot to think about there. Need to unpack that.
No. I tend to do this. If I'm not careful, I will trample over Walt. So I know he's getting ready to ask a question.
Well, I actually
I have to hold back.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've kind of heard you talk about through this, and one of the things I've tried to instill in my daughters, is that you have the right to defend yourself, and
100%.
you have the right to stand up and say no. And I think that too many times, either subtly or whatever, they get this idea that they're beholden to somebody, or that they,
Right.
they have to put Life 360 on their phone because their boyfriend wants them to, or whatever.
Right. Oh,
And that's
no.
exactly right. And I've said, you know what? As soon as that happens, no. The answer is no, and they're done, because they don't have your best interest at heart. But I think that it's one of the things that I think is great about what you're doing and the message that you have is that you are in control of yourself. You are in control of your life. You are not beholden to anybody, and you have the right to say no and to defend yourself. And I think that what we see too many times is that, whether it be through institution or government, or subtly through social cues and social media, is people feeling like they have to surrender their rights to defend themselves or to protect themselves, women in particular. And I love the message of no, absolutely not. You are in control. You are the one who is the master of your fate and destiny. You stand up to this stuff and you tell them no.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate it. And, you said we have the right. And, we as humans, like, one of the things that makes me bonkers about conservatives and Republicans and, it's a constitutional right. No, it is not. Damn it. Don't sit there and tell me you're a constitutionalist and you're conservative and you understand the Constitution. Then you have the stones to sit there and tell me it's a constitutional right. Take a seat, bitch, because you don't know what you're talking about. All of those rights in the Constitution are inalienable rights given to us by God.
Right. We already have
that
them.
we every human on the planet is born with the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, and protect themselves and their families and the things that they perceive to be important to them for life and liberty.
Absolutely.
Period. Black and white. We just happen to have these absolute badass founding fathers that understood that and guaranteed those things to us in the Constitution. So don't you, if I ever see you say that stuff on any of my, I will come at you like a spider monkey, because it makes me nuts. Absolutely makes me nuts. That being said, we have the rights, like Walt said, but we also have the responsibilities behind it. And if we don't want these assholes in DC or at your state level or at your city or whatever to tell you what they think is best for you, you need to also grow a pair of, whether that be balls or tits or whatever, and start taking full responsibility for yourself, and stop letting your goddamn school board make these decisions for you. Stop letting your goddamn governor make these decisions for you, and stop capitulating because you just don't want to be hassled. I tell you guys, it's not liberals that are going to take this country down. It's going to be the goddamn conservatives that continue to comply because they don't want hassle.
Yeah,
that's what's going to do it. And you guys are pussies, and you better start growing a pair because it's getting real.
Well, I would ask you to clarify, but I think you were pretty clear.
Yeah, that was clear.
And so that's right. And when people say, and this is where the left can get on their bullshit with, well, yes, that's why we have to have responsible gun owners. No. That is why we as an industry need to start figuring out positive ways to self-police. And I don't like using that word because of the connotation, but for lack of a better term, and figure out ways to be responsible. To come back to that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? We are blessed to have that guaranteed in the Constitution here in the United States. The double-edged sword of that is the individual pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness also creates a selfish society where people only look at themselves, right? So they don't look outward to see how their decisions about what they think personally is best is going to affect other individuals. You have to affect their pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And when you do, you push a button, and God help you with these women. You get there, and it's all she wrote. And so that's kind of how I've been able to be successful at turning a lot of my students into advocates for their rights, not just the Second Amendment, but their rights. Like in Washington State, I asked them and this is the beauty and the negative of Washington State for concealed carry. It's coming now. We have to have a permit, which you should never have to have a permit. You should never have to pay a fee to the government to exercise your inalienable right. That's
I agree with that 100%.
Go down the Constitution. Yeah. So therefore, for your listeners, by the way, for women who can't afford training and their permits, We the Female does help provide scholarship funds to help support those things. And I have an event that I want to tell you about later. So remind me later, because I want you guys, I just told you to sponsor it. So see what I did there. But but we don't have to have that. So women are, there's a lot of people carrying around guns, but they don't actually know a lot of the laws because they're not required to take a class in Washington State to get it, right? But at the same time, so one of the things that always gets them, right? I love this. This is like, if you're an firearms instructor out there, reach out to me. I'll help you write this curriculum because this is going to hit, right? I say, are we a duty to retreat, castle doctrine, or stand your ground state? Well, we're castle doctrine, right? Or what does that mean? Right? Well, if you break that, I can shoot you, right? So in Washington State, we're none of them. We're duty to retreat by precedence. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I said, that means that there's laws on the books, cases that have been ruled in favor of you retreating. And that's worse than the law, right? I mean, that's going to hold, it's actually going to create the bridge for the law, if they ever actually do it. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I said, what that really means is if a dude comes into your house, beats the crap out of you and rapes you, and he's on the way out the door and you shoot him in the back, you risk the possibility of going to jail because your life is no longer in danger. What? Right. Oh my God. What do you mean? What do you mean? What if he comes back? I said, exactly. What if he does come back?
You have to wait for him to come back.
Right.
You have to wait for him to come back. Right. And so now I've got him.
Yeah.
Right. And so now they're pissed because their personal lives are potentially affected by this stuff. And I'm like, this is why you pay attention. This is why you got to do what you got to do with you defending your rights.
As we are starting to wind down the interview part, and I know you're going to hang out with us, and so I'm assuming we're going to get some other comments as we go along.
So in other words, what this really is a commercial break for them to go get a drink because they can't. They're like, I
still have a comment.
So Walt is going to be like, Alan,
I still have a comment.
What the hell were you thinking asking this crazy crowd on the show?
No,
you obviously haven't heard some of our other guests.
You need to go.
I'm moving to Georgia, by the way, you guys. You know that, right? I'm moving your direction. I'm coming from you.
I know you are. But yeah, you're moving to way South Georgia. But at least you're gonna be a lot closer than Washington.
It's not.
Yeah, you are.
It's like central. No, it's not. I'm an hour from Savannah. I'm almost right. I'll be
South Georgia. I'm in Northwest Georgia. Compound. So anyway,
well, you're up there in South Carolina.
No, I'm not. I'm in Northwest Georgia.
Lesser South Carolina,
close to Alabama. Look, my good.
Oh, you're on that end.
My good friend, the sheriff of Bartow County is a really good friend. And I get the opportunity to interview him once a month. And one of the things, he's a strong Second Amendment advocate. He definitely wants people to feel comfortable. The sheriff's department has opened themselves up to do citizens training days, range days. They want you to feel comfortable. But he says something that I use all the time. It makes perfect sense. He said, when you are in a situation where you are being threatened or something is happening, you're going to call 911. And my officers are going to do everything they can to get there as quickly as they can, but they're not going to be there faster than you.
That's right.
You are
your
there.
Own first responder. Right.
And he said, and if you can do something, even if you don't end up shooting somebody, if you can buy the responding officers the time to respond, that is worth your life.
I have 2 911 calls in my firearms class. I have one that I'm convinced is off the West Coast somewhere, probably California, of a woman who's home alone with her baby. Long story short, the 911 operator tells her, tell them the police are on the phone and lock yourself in the room. And he ends up killing her and her baby, right? And this is a real call, right? There's obviously no video, it's just audio. But you hear screaming, right? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And then the phone just cuts out, right? All of it, like the weight in the room, in my classroom, right? Women crying and all this stuff. And then I got this other one, the opposite of it, right? Where it's this woman and this is some woman living in the South. And she is pissed off that this MFer is trying to break in and interrupt Judge Judy and cocktail hour because she is not having any of it, and I asked him, what do you notice? Like, well, she's so much calmer. Yeah, because she's ready. But what else do you notice? And it's interesting because women don't catch this. The 911 operator asks her if she has a gun in that second one, right? And then tells her, whatever county it is, I don't remember, district, I think it's district, whatever, says you can use that gun to protect your property, right? Whereas the other guy's telling her to hide. But at the end of the day, all right, even if you're not a gun person, right? Let's talk about that a minute before we wrap this up, because I want to reiterate the importance. Like, we don't have a right. I'm a gun woman. Not everybody is. But I tell women, like, a gun is a tool. A gun is just a tool. Your best weapon, your most powerful weapon is your brain. You are the weapon, ladies and gentlemen, particularly ladies, right? Because we can be really quick thinkers in these kind of, especially if our babies are around, right? You are the weapon. You fight, you kick, you scream, right? I asked the ladies in my class, I'm like, if Sharon, the one that was murdered and her baby was murdered, I'm like, what could she have done? Well, she locked the door. Yeah. Did she throw the dresser in front of the door? Right? Did she just start grabbing stuff and throwing it against the door? Because if she had, he probably couldn't gotten in. You are the weapon. The gun, the knife, whatever is a tool, right? At your disposal. You use whatever it is that you have there. You know, my husband and I are rewatching The Walking Dead for analytical purposes, clearly, of course, right now. But there's a scene in there where, and it's so, like, I almost want to take it and put it in. It's too gory. But did you ever watch Walking Dead? You guys are in Georgia. Come on now, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm convinced I'm moving right in the middle of where they were walking, because we just bought property, 30 acres out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like,
no, you're you're nowhere close to where they filmed.
I know that, but I'm like, man, like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Like, we're going to have to, because we just bought 30 acres to homestead, actually. But there's a scene in it. And if you guys remember this, it's like season 3 or 4, where these guys, they come after them, and they're on their way to Terminus, and they disarm them, and they have Carl on the ground, and they're threatening to, assault and murder Carl while Rick watches, right? And Rick is disarmed. The guy's got him pinned down, and he can't get to him. And what does Rick do? Do you guys remember in that scene what he does? He reaches back and bites the dude's throat out, right? And right. I'm like, that's it right there, right? Because I know, like, women, oh my God, that's so grown. Like, that's your baby? Yes, you would. Probably quicker than a man would, a woman would, right? That trash can thing, right? What do you have available to you, right? And so it's amazing when you change your mindset about what the weapon is, right? What the most powerful weapon is. It's amazing how much more powerful you begin to feel, especially for women.
Right. I think what you're saying, and what I wish more in general people would understand about this issue is, you don't have to choose to be a victim. You can choose to be in charge of your own life. You don't have to be a victim. And
guess what? No one is coming to save you. Even if you're in a county where you've got a good sheriff, like Alan does or whatever, right? Well, in the county, it's even longer, right? But say in the city, say in a funded city, right? Let's just go with that. Best case scenario is 5 to 7 minutes, right? The optimal response time, 5 to 7 minutes. That's just to respond. Then they can take potentially up to another 5 minutes to decide, right? They're just showing up on scene. What the hell's going on, right?
Right.
What do they do? Then they make decisions based on information collected once they're there, or via the 911 call or whatever, to make a decision. So you could potentially be looking at, in the best case scenario, 7 to 10 minutes for a law enforcement officer to take action, right?
Right.
Like, and I've had to draw my gun. Thank God I didn't have to pull the trigger. But that should happen fast.
It does happen it happens very fast.
Very fast.
And this is where, you mentioned the 911 call. This is where teaching people that your safety, your security is in your hands.
Your hands. You are the weapon.
If you feel comfortable understanding that, you'll be able to provide the information quickly to 911. You have to think about it. You can't just walk around in a daze. You have to think about, okay, if somebody breaks in, where do I go? What do I say? How quick can I get to a phone call? Can I describe the person? The number of people that I notice 2 or 3 voices. The more you can provide that information, the faster police will be able to act. And like you said, your brain is the most powerful weapon you have. You have to train it.
Yeah, you do. That's a great example. You do have to train it. I do low light scenario training and scenario training at a place in Florida, and I love doing that. Of course, I went into it with a little bit more experience in some cases because my husband doing what he does with force protection, like physical security and so on. And so we're always like running drills and stuff. But if you have children, I love this one. Make it a game for your children, right? As soon as they're old enough to know colors and numbers. right? Start making it a game for them, right? 3 years old, 2 years old, whatever, right? How many people, we're going to walk into Costco, how many people are going to have blue shirts on? Mm-hmm. How many people have glasses on? And you can elevate it, right? As they get older, you can make it more challenging, but it becomes inherent to them where they're just paying attention to their surroundings.
Yeah. Learn how to be observant of your surrounding.
Right. But I like to argue that about 95, 99% of any situation where you're going to have to use deadly force, you can usually get yourself out of. Right. And I'm a combative person. Right. And it is amazing how much more BS I will put up with from people because I'm armed now. Woo, baby. I'm like, okay, you keep talking. I'm gonna leave now. Right. And they want to keep going. And in the past, I've been like, listen here, I'm like looking up at dudes. Right. Like I was like, because I'm short. So I'm like, I'm a scrapper. Right. And I'm like, I will whoop your ass in front of your friends and all this kind of stuff. Now I'm like, okay. Because I know what consequences I'm going to face, right? And I could be justified.
Obviously, you do a great job of trying to give a comprehensive approach to ladies, and I'm sure others, including if husbands want to be involved and just want to learn a little bit more, because
they have to wear dresses though when they come to class.
I'm sorry?
They have to wear a dress when they come.
Alan has no problem with that.
Yeah,
that's not what the pictures I saw from you, Walt.
Well, whatever it takes to get in a good class.
Before we move on to the next segment of the show, I do want you to very quickly, in case someone's, a lot of times people listen to a podcast this long, they'll listen half on the way to work, half on the way back. So
sure.
Before they check out, if they want to follow you, maybe even engage, learn a little bit more, maybe get some material, look at your foundation, your nonprofit, where are all the ways people can learn more?
Well, if you're not offended easily, stilettos and shotguns, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram on those. We the Female is my organization, and that they're definitely different voices. You can tell I stick pretty much to business on We the Female. We the Female _official on Instagram. We the Female on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. The real SNS on Twitter. WeTheFemale.net. I'm in the process of restructuring my website over there, but I would love to talk about briefly two things. First of all, 100% of every dime that comes in to We the Female goes back directly to help support the mission to as I like to say, our mission is to arm the women with education, confidence, and self-defense. I do not get paid to do this. I'm blessed to be in a financial position where, I was successful in business and so I don't have to. So every dime that is donated goes 100% to that, including scholarships for women. We give them to all women, but we focus on domestic violence survivors, single mothers just out of their violent situations, particularly in the cities. And we do not discriminate at all based on your political affiliation, your gender preference, any of that stuff. Every human on the planet has a right to be armed. In February, U.S. Law Shield, who I'm grateful, they are a huge supporter of We the Female. We are bringing to Houston. This is the first time I'm mentioning this publicly. You guys, it's first here on their show.
Breaking.
We are creating an event, the Aware and Prepared class we do, the holistic defense, where I come and teach defensive mindset. We have somebody come in and do an introduction to hand-to-hand. And then we have somebody come in and teach from U.S. Law Shield self-defense law, right? Because it's not just gun law, it's self-defense law. We're starting in Houston, and we are going to provide the training and the permit fees for 250 women for free.
Wow. That's
awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if it's successful, and U.S. Law Shield says they're ready, right? They're ready to take it nationally. So, obviously we focus in the bigger cities. We are going to charge a very small fee for registration just for people to commit. So we don't have, but the money will come back. Like we got swag bags. Sons of Liberty Gunworks is going to be one of our big sponsors as well, along with others. So I'm grateful for that support. But our vision is to expand this and to take this and make it bigger. And we're starting intentionally in a constitutional carry state for a couple of reasons. One, that's where U.S. Law Shield is based out of. But two, part of what we want to emphasize is just because you don't have to have the permit to carry concealed doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the education and the knowledge behind it.
Right.
So this is a way for us to hack that system of self-policing and also help women not only be able to afford their inalienable right that's being, they're being charged for, but also to do so responsibly. Also, just side note, it also, if you have the permit, if you actually pay the fee for the permit, it reciprocates to other states.
Yeah, you have to know which states have reciprocation, whether or not you can, or reciprocity, as they'll call it, where you can use it or not use it. Very important to know. Kerry, I know you want to hang out with us. We're going to have a little fun. It was a heavier subject, but I think it's an important one, especially both Walt and I. We jokingly say between his 3 girls and my 4, we're only 2 short of a softball team. So
just about.
I had your daughter. Now all we need is just a catcher or a pitcher, and we're good to go.
That's right.
But we always go to our audience. We have a private listeners group on Facebook. If people want to join, of course, our public page is The Wilder Ride, or that's facebook.com/The Wilder Ride. And from there, that's our public group. You can click join group, and there's our private group. We call it the listeners group. And Walt, you put out a poll once a week for our listeners to put you through your own version of hell. And you have to review a really bad movie, a segment we like to call
God, what is this? Stop it! I don't get me out of this hell!
Walt, what did you end up having to battle through this week?
Well, our listeners did nobody any favors this week. They voted for one of the worst movies of all time, Ice Spiders. And apparently
I was hoping for this one. I voted. I was hoping it was going to be good.
What was that?
Well, I'm glad you hoped that way, Alan. It won. But I think we have an all-time low. This may be
after you talked about the cannibal women eating avocados in South LA with Bill Maher or whatever that movie was.
What the hell is this you guys are talking about?
These are movies you can actually watch on Amazon Prime.
Good Lord. I can't.
Well, this I hate to even call it a movie, but it was made in 2007. It got a 3.1 on IMDb out of 10.
Okay.
However, there's some disagreement within the world of amateur film rating. Because if you go to Amazon, which I don't know why I did that, it gets a 4.1 out of 5. So,
okay.
Yeah,
was this like the filmmaker and their families?
I guess so. But it had, let's see, 123 votes and 164 of them. I'm sorry, 64% of them gave it 5 stars. I have.
Look, if it's spiders, just burn it, right? Just scorch it.
Yeah, well, exactly. And they should have burned this movie. Now, some of the people who wrote reviews on Amazon, I guess I can understand why they gave it a 5, because I don't think those people spoke English, nor had they ever seen a movie before.
I'm eating chocolate and almost just spit it out.
I'm just going to throw away the Amazon reviews. I'm going with the 3.1, and that was generous. The summary on IMDb is: a top secret government project has produced giant spiders, and they have escaped, killing and eating everything in sight.
It's actually plausible.
Okay.
That's plausible. However,
don't trust the government.
Yes. And that is the one believable part of this. The rest of it kind of goes haywire, because the top secret government base where they're working with these spiders is built right next to a ski resort where,
of course, they're always that way. So
of
give the employees time off.
and it's right next to the place where they're bringing a bunch of random college students up to try out for the Olympic ski team.
So the irony here is that you guys understand that the colder the climate, the less venomous spiders there are.
So yes,
but that's why they're called ice spiders.
Ice spiders.
But here's the problem with this: throughout the whole thing, you can tell the snow keeps melting, and a bunch of people are in shorts. So you kind of realize that maybe they should have gotten the people out of the background. We're walking around on their summer vacation clothes.
That's your face.
So they're shooting the movie, obviously not in the winter, and trying to make it look winter. Oh my God.
Even some of the actors who are paid to be in this movie are walking around. Okay. And so they're like, oh, these sub freezing temperatures are just killing me. And they're all walking around in short sleeve shirts. You can't see their breath. And they drive through a big mud puddle that's all water.
To be fair, have you been to Washington in the winter?
Well, this is true.
That exists.
Yeah. Although there are a couple
25 degrees and people are in shorts up here.
Well, Walt, you're one of those people. You never wear pants in the winter.
No, but I'm the
I wear
exception.
pants.
I'm just happy if you're wearing any kind of shorts.
Yeah, a Speedo, close enough.
Banana hammock.
Well, there are three things I want to mention that are redeeming.
There's only so much tonnage you can put in that. I'm telling you right now. Okay.
That is true.
Have you seen the technology of spandex these days?
I've seen people putting it to the test.
You and me both. Look, my previous life, I waxed buttholes for a living. Okay. So there is nothing that you're going to show me. Like, this is like, I've seen that shit put to the test. Okay. So I know.
Note to self, I'll be cutting that, but using it as an outtake and probably my ringtone.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, there
Your
are
wife's gonna hear this message. You're gonna hear this woman saying, "I used to like do that on buttholes." Like, I'm like, it's Kerry calling. It's just
It's Kerry. It's gonna be your voice, your ringtone for me.
Well, there are three people worth mentioning in this thing.
Not me.
They're hardly worth mentioning, but I'm going to mention them just to have something to fill here. Patrick Muldoon is one of the actors. Do you recognize that name?
Really?
Yep.
Who's that?
He was in Starship Troopers, Saved by the Bell. That's about it. And Ice Spiders. He was in a bunch of stuff, but he's at least known.
He couldn't even make Sharknado.
He did not make Sharknado. He was actually filming Days of Our Lives at the time. So he's been in a ton of stuff. He's actually a legitimate-ish actor. He has 3 things in pre or post production right now. So he's a working actor and should have known better than to take this one. The other person of note is Vanessa Williams, but not that Vanessa Williams.
Oh, I was gonna say
the lesser talented Vanessa Williams, who was also in one of the worst TV shows of all time, Melrose Place, with Patrick Muldoon.
I was gonna say that's where Patrick Muldoon's from.
Yes. So the other Vanessa Williams and Patrick Muldoon knew each other from there. So there was obvious, huge amounts of chemistry-ish.
Kind of. Sorry.
There really wasn't any chemistry, but you would hope that there would be because you'd think they know each other. Here's the other actor in this that was kind of shocking to me. Do you recognize the name Stephen J. Cannell?
Yeah, he's the guy that wrote a lot of the pilots.
Knight
Rider. Yeah.
He worked on The Greatest American Hero.
Yeah, he wrote all like the 80s, like producer, director, writer.
Absolutely.
I mean, he started like the Rockford Files in the 70s.
The Rockford Files.
I'm totally. And side note, I had a guy in my salon that was a writer for those shows.
Really?
Worked for Stephen J. Cannell. Yeah.
Then I was going to say he's got a tie to this movie. You have shows like Hardcastle and McCormick, Riptide, The Greatest American Hero, and he was the creator of the A-Team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he was a major actor in this movie. And
that explains it right there. He's not he's a writer, not an actor. So I don't really know what else you need to sum all that up.
He is not an actor. And so he's in it. It's worth watching for his appearance in it. I guess, because there's not a whole lot else to see. So it's a terrible movie. The plot is absolutely awful, but there is one cool thing. The spiders
I watched it and I loved
every person in sight. So if you're into watching a bunch of obnoxious college students get eaten by giant spiders, you're up for, watching the government experiment with spiders. And then at the end, the bonus of, will they make a Nice Spiders 2 or won't they? So
I see they haven't, but do they leave it open for one?
They definitely leave it open.
Oh.
So I guess if it had been a big blockbuster, they'd have gone for it. If they'd gotten over a 3.1, they may have opened the door there. But it's not great. It's a Velocipaster is still better. Killer Sofa probably is better than this one. There are a lot that are better than this one.
What the hell are you guys? What do you want? How do you?
You got to go back and listen.
Look, this is what lockdowns do to y'all, right? This is what lockdowns do. This is the end of Amazon. This is like the bowels, the drudges, the bilge, as it were, if you know anything about boats, of Amazon Prime. and Netflix. This is what happens.
Absolutely.
When
We're going to
you're
have
locked
to
down.
go listen to some of our classic episodes of this season and go through, because Walt is forced to live through one of these every one of our interviews.
Yes, this is trudging through the dark end of entertainment. So
you're in the muddy end of the pool.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So again, unfortunately, one that I have to say, don't waste your time. It's not great. It's not very entertaining.
Not great.
Watch Velocipaster instead. And I don't even know if a good bowl or gummies would help with this one, but
it's always bad when that can't even help.
It's not going to help. So yeah, take a pass on Ice Spiders. But I mean, if you want to see the other Vanessa Williams, maybe check out the trailer. Oh, which by the way, I don't think there was a trailer up on it either. So
I think there is on IMDb.
Yeah, there might be. Oh, yes, there is on IMDb. You're right. You're right. 1 minute and 39 of your life you will never get back.
All right. Well, there's your movie review. Of course, folks, if you're part of our listeners group on Facebook, every week Walt puts out a poll. He picks 3 crazy movies that are at least free. He's not dumb enough to pay for these.
They are free.
He picks 3 movies. You get to vote. If you want to pick the movie you want to hear him review, make sure you're part of our listeners group. Now let's move on to our news segment. We are all creatures of using the internet. We understand that if it's online, it's got to be true. And so we created this segment where we look at 4 different news stories. Walt, you pick 2. I pick 2. This is our segment called
It's No Bullshit.
And Walt, you've got the first one.
Okay, so this one comes from the Metro News in the UK. Village terrorized by bandit pouring baked beans through letterboxes.
Oh, that's not right.
Well,
letter or litter?
Letterboxes, like mailboxes.
Okay.
So a baked bean bandit is emptying cans of the good stuff all over a village in a sticky reign of terror.
I think the good stuff, that's subjective, right? Because I don't like
that is subjective. Well,
really?
You'll hear why they think it is the good stuff. The mystery vandal has been covering doorsteps, homes, and cars with the famous orange sauce.
Oh, geez.
Cops are now urging anyone with information to spill the beans.
One of these stories.
All right, I'm going to head out now.
See you, Kerry.
This is coming straight from the news story. I apologize in advance. The shocking turn of events is taking place in the pretty countryside village of Warnish in Surrey. It is home to just over 3,000 people, with residents understandably rocked by the recent incidents.
Rocked.
I'm sure they're very rocked by this.
By it.
A Surrey police spokesperson said local officers are receiving reports of incidents in Warshannock where beans and other food have been poured onto residents' front doors and cars overnight. The victims are understandably distressed by this unacceptable behavior. They added, local officers will be patrolling the area and keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. Officers also shared some snaps of the messy crime scenes. In one picture, 4 empty cans of Heinz baked beans are discarded near a doorstep studded with large orange beans, while others show a gray car with sauce dribbling down the driver's window, leaving an unsightly orange smudge. However, some residents seem to find the humor while urging police to catch the criminals. One person wrote, "Hope you can catch those horrendous criminals. Otherwise, the house prices in Warshner will plunge." Another joked, "What half-baked idiots would do this? I hope they get thrown in the can."
It's no bullshit.
Oh, my goodness. Look, the only that's missing in this story is buns and wieners, but that may be taken completely different.
So I used to wax those back in the day.
I heard
that. Y'all remind me of my previous career.
Oh, my gosh. All right, I've got the next news story. Apparently, we're going to stay in the UK for a little bit. Remember the story a couple of weeks back, Walt, about the guy that had the fetish for the court cases, but he wanted female librarians to read it to him, and then he would start, taking one off while he was listening to them talk.
I just found a new business opportunity.
Yes, there is. Apparently, someone has this fetish. Well, there's a new fetish out there.
Is it really new?
There's a guy who's caught. Well, it's in the news.
Tell me, and I'll tell you.
Well, harassing librarians is apparently not the only way some people get off on their rocks. Richard Cove, in this case, they caught the guy, from the town of Worthing on England's southern coast, had been charged with a peculiar and strangely impressive crime. Over 2 years, the 45-year-old made more than 1,200 calls to the National Health Service, or the NHS hotline, all to indulge himself in his foot fetish.
I think that would be extraordinarily dangerous.
Oh, that's not fucking new. Excuse me, that's not new.
No, foot fetishes are not new. What is different is Cove calling the NHS emergency line, getting women and saying, "Can you please describe your feet to me?"
Oh, gosh.
And if they start going down the path, well, are you calling because you have a problem? He goes, well, could you describe your feet? I'll tell you whether or not mine have the same issue. Then all of a sudden they start hearing some grunts and noises that lead them to believe that he's into it more than just the information.
Look. All right, I'm gonna have to defend this guy on this one, okay? Because
defend the indefensible.
I'm all about, okay, here's the feminist talking here, right? If these women were that stupid that they bought that bullshit, they deserved everything they got.
I don't think that they bought it. I think the story is that they were wasting the NHS's time with this
That's
guy.
one thing, right? But no, listen, Alan, no, listen. This is bullshit. Because look, I don't know, maybe I'm having a problem. What do your feet look like? Please, right? Nah, ladies, y'all know better. Don't now, how many of you were lonely and looking for attention too, and you just decided until it got too weird, and then you decided to draw the line? I got questions.
Did it just get weird? Yeah, it just got weird. Okay.
It got weird.
Yeah.
How about this? He was able to trick the women by acting like he himself was an elderly female, putting on a grandmotherly like voice to get them to confide in him about their feet.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
Oh dear, I got these corns bugging me. Do you have corns on your toes?
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why
disturbing.
socialized healthcare is a bad idea.
Yes, it is.
Our mental health needs to be made more of a priority.
And mental health needs to be made a priority.
Cops did track the guy down, and he was charged with false personal details, false telephone numbers, and false ailments. He went to August 10th to plead guilty to one count of making malicious communications. He'll be sentenced next month.
It's no bullshit.
So it's a crime to be a hypochondriac?
Well,
so it's a crime to be a hypochondriac in England. Okay.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. If you call once, twice, maybe even 3 times, they'll just let it go. 1,200, that becomes a problem.
Look, and again, right? Back to Walt's OnlyFans account, right? There's OnlyFans out there. I guess I don't have one. Although if I did, let me tell you, all I would do would be sitting there in leather, spewing anti-government propaganda. So
all you need is leather and guns, and you'll have. People will pay
obviously,
for that.
you saw that picture of me in my latex and guns, right? You must have seen my response to Kamala Harris's.
Oh wait, you have latex and gun?
I'll send you the picture. Yeah.
Okay.
So you didn't see it? You've not seen that picture?
I don't troll people's stuff. I'm horrible about that. My wife is really good. She's if she meets somebody, whatever, she's I went and checked their Facebook and I went through all their pictures.
Well, this might not be the picture you want your wife to find without context, because that could get you in trouble.
Walt, we can go to you for the next news story.
This one's not going to be a whole lot better.
No.
All right. So continuing with our theme of how great government is, nearly $13 million stolen from a health fund spent at adult website in University of South Florida embezzlement case.
That was research, Walt. Don't judge me.
I think that's their defense.
That's supporting a lot of adult industry.
Listen to this scheme. From KTLA.com, a former accounts manager for a nonprofit affiliated with the University of South Florida's medical school has pleaded guilty to embezzling almost $13 million, spending most of it at an adult website, with some of it coming back to him. The Tampa Bay Times reports that Raphael Pelusi, 59, is facing up to 20 years in prison.
His problem was addicted to too much Pelusi.
Well, look, he's not a pervert. He's Italian. She went there. Oh, yes, I said it.
Mr. Pelusi is facing up to 20 years in prison under the deal, was recently filed in Tampa's federal court. He had worked for the University Medical Services Association, which provides staffing and support for the USF Health and other medical providers in the Tampa Bay area. And here's where it gets fun. According to court documents, he spent almost $12 million at an adult website that allows users to subscribe to channels belonging to specific women who disrobe and engage in other things.
OnlyFans.
Yep. An investigation showed that Pelosi subscribed to a channel belonging to his stepson's fiance, and they split almost $750,000 in profits.
Holy cow.
With Mr. Pelosi taking 60%.
Okay, I get it. So what they're doing is a sort of laundering.
They're laundering money through
okay.
it. Yes.
Okay, now I'm with you. Because $13 million sponsoring people's individual chat cams or chat rooms or whatever.
That would be what we call an addiction.
But you're sending the money to the somebody who your son's dating.
Yeah.
You're probably only sending it there so that way it gets back to you, like you said, and then it gets.
Yeah, he's taking the 60%.
She was probably in on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The investigative team developed a working theory that he worked either with the principals of the adult content provider or with the female profiles of the adult content provider in order to financially benefit from funds charged. The Times said, I'm killing his name, whatever it is, also is accused of making $647,000 in payments to an LLC he owned with his wife, plus other expenditures, including $374,000 for personal travel, $191,000 in rent for a family member, and $120,000 in household improvements. The fraud was detected in November, leading to the firing of Mr. Pelosi, his boss, and the Medical Services Association interior auditor. In a statement, the school says they have implemented enhanced control structures, including upgrading financial reporting systems to better protect against another $13 million theft.
It's no bullshit.
What kind of lack of oversight does this not-for-profit have that you just $13 million is just, did we miss a payment somewhere?
This is government subsidized nonprofit. Are you kidding me? Is that really a question you just asked?
It is.
Come on, man. Come on.
It's AKA a license to steal.
I am shocked because I do a segment. We do a thing every day in our morning about looking at folks that get themselves caught stealing money from charities. We've had organizations where they lose 50,000, maybe 100,000, but 13 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of nuts.
That is a lot of money.
And for the fact,
you do notice they fired the internal auditor as well.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, that just makes me angry because I was part of a group where the woman was actually known to, we didn't know it at the time because I became involved with the board after she had already been hired, but she was basically not-for-profit hopping as an executive director because she knew a lot about the world of not-for-profits, but she knew enough to be able to steal money for those not-for-profits. Right. And as soon as it got hot, she would move to the next one. And we were the ones who caught her, and she ended up serving about 14 years in jail.
Good for you.
Stealing from a organization there to help people with health care that couldn't afford it. So,
yeah, I hate that crap. I mean, there's a lot of POSs out there, and that one definitely is at the top when you're taking money. I can't stand that. I mean, that is one of the people that do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and you take that money away is that happened here in Washington State at the state level, right? Our state we were the ones that had $700 million stolen during the COVID thing, all the COVID relief unemployment money. That happened here. It was a Nigerian prince. I'm kidding. I don't know. Specifically a Nigerian prince, but no, it was Nigeria. Like it was some kind of thing. Apparently. Well, now we know why he's got all that money, that $700 million to give away in those emails. But yeah, he ripped off Washington State unemployment for $700 million. And so there were people here that couldn't get unemployment money that legitimately needed that money for months because of that fraud.
All right. I've got the last news story. Walt, this is going to be right up your dad's alley, and I think you'll get a kick out of it, and I think our guest will as well. Bank robbers' handwriting so bad, the staff didn't realize they were being robbed. This is a story. It's
perfect.
Always shocking experience when a person shows up at your workplace and demands all the money from your cash register, unless, of course, you have no real idea what they're actually saying. One would-be bank robber from the UK might want to invest in a printer for his future needs. The man's handwriting was so awful, the staff at the targeted bank could not decipher the note that he used to demand money. This actually started back on March the 18th. The individual Ian Slattery from St. Leonard's on England's south coast entered a branch office of the Nationwide Building Society in Eastbourne. The 67-year-old handed the clerk a note he had penned beforehand, or at least so he thought. Unfortunately for him, the staff member couldn't make heads or tails of it, and the man got so flustered he just left. It took him about 20 minutes. They finally realized he was asking for money, and so they decided they better call the cops in case he tried it again. So they turned over the footage, and he got away scot-free. Now, he should have just learned his lesson right there. But no, Walt, what do we know about criminals?
They never learned their lesson.
No. Slattery decides, you know what? Okay, I was able to get away with it. Nobody caught me in March. I'm going to try it again, but I'm going to work on my penmanship, which he did. Later, on March 26th, Slattery tried his luck at another Nationwide branch in his own hometown, this time of St. Leonard's. This time, he had written the note much more effectively. Having read the note, the teller became afraid for her safety and forked over about $3,300. Again, the cops were called, and they doubled down on the investigation, but were not able to get any details at that time. Hence the third attempt by Slattery. He went into a Nation West bank in Hastings on April the 1st. Should have realized April Fool's Day, you're about to have a bad day. The staff was able to not only read the note, but were able to challenge Slattery, demanding that he leave. They're not going to give you any money, to which he got flustered and actually left. But by this point in time, the cops were able to catch up with him. They found him wandering outside of his own home, trying to figure out what bank should I maybe rob next. Too bad he won't be able to attempt it. He has been taken to jail.
It's amazing. It's astounding. But it's no bullshit.
Good.
Look at my man. He's just trying to supplement that Social Security check.
67-year-old retiree. What do you want to do? Oh, maybe I'll rob a bank.
What has he got to lose at this point? All right. I mean, my joke has always been that joke, haha, maybe, is that when I turn 80, I'm going to start selling cocaine at hookers in the park, because what are you going to do? I'm going to get the Martha Stewart suite if I go to jail, right? I'm not even like if, right? Because usually once you're over a certain age,
suite.
They don't even give you that. That's an age test. But just in case they're not, Martha Stewart was this woman that had a TV show and this whole home decorating empire, and she got caught at embezzling and laundering money. You may know her
I thought it was
from her
Insider Trading.
episodes with Snoop Dogg. Oh yeah, maybe that was it.
Insider Trading, yeah.
Snoop Dogg making weed brownies.
Well, that's at least acceptable today.
Right. So that's what I'm gonna do. They're gonna put me in, I'm gonna get, low security prison at 80 years old, 75, 80 years old, right? I get healthcare, I get meals. I'm like, and so I tell this to my retirement planner, and she says, you can't do that. And I said, but you can't tell me it's not a good idea. And she gets real quiet, and I said, you can't tell me it's not a good idea. And she goes, you can't do that, Kerry. And I'm like,
that sounds like real spurious advice.
So I told one of my 90-year-old clients my day spa that, and she goes, that's a good idea. And I said, listen, lady, don't you be stealing my idea. She said, she says, I'm older and craftier than you are. Like, she was great about it. So just for S&Gs, I have to tell you guys this. So as we're sitting here and I'm listening to these whacked out stories, I just Google, right? Odd stories.
Uh-huh.
And I pull up, I just took the first news thing on there. Fox News has a list, right, of odd stories. The first one that popped up. Do you know how many of them came from Florida? I have to say that obviously, the whole Florida man thing, I know it's a joke, but not.
Not a joke.
No, most of the stories do have a Florida tie-in.
One of our stories this year was a Florida man who got busted because he had a tattoo of Florida on his forehead down his nose. He literally was Florida man.
And remember, there was actually a gentleman who got arrested named Carl Florida. So he was literally Florida man.
I can't. I got a white girl on this one, full blown. I can't even. Literally can't even. I just. You
should listen to our shows. We scour
apparently I need to.
We scour for these, and actually, they're not hard to find.
No, clearly, yeah. I mean, there was way more on there than I was like. This
takes
like
about 5 minutes.
I think, although I didn't think it was weird enough. Although I'm kind of disappointed in the dude who was mortified. Like some dude in Florida was mad that some chick was skinny dipping in a swimming pool. I'm like, were you really mad?
Why would you be mad?
Well, here's what I always say.
I didn't click on the story, but
here's what I always say though: the people that are the first ones who want to get naked in public are the ones who most likely are not the ones we want to see naked in public.
Right? Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, and look, I'm all about free the nipple, whatever. Like, because there's some men that I don't want to see naked, topless either, like shirtless. Like, you know what I mean? Like, turnabout's fair play, whatever. Right? I ain't upset about that kind of stuff. Although, ladies, we can appreciate this boob sweat. Like, it's just a thing, right? We don't need it. These are conversations. Like, you know what I mean? This is just, there's other reasons why you just don't want to do that.
I'm going to have to bring you, we're going to have a whole different podcast. We're going to call it Adult Talk with Kerry.
Yeah, your follower's going to be like, she disturbs me, but I'm intrigued.
But I'm going to follow her.
But I've got to follow this, right? So, and this is pretty much who I am. And Alan can tell you, he can tell you, I was really surprised. I'm like, well, I'm surprised you asked me on that podcast, but okay. Well, because I'm not going to filter myself I know there's a time and a place, but anything that's related to my social media, like, this is who I am. But yeah, so you're right. Like, just because you can
doesn't mean you should.
Doesn't mean you good. That's a good rule to live by, y'all. I'm just saying, whether self-defense or swimming naked in the pool or standing protesting on the side of the road.
Let's get I'm trying so hard to get to the end of the show. Let's get to our final segment, our entertainment segment.
Oh, there's one more. Yay!
Yes, this is where you can weigh in if you've got a list.
We're just going to let Kerry go for 30 minutes, and there it is.
Well, this is our entertainment segment where we get a chance to tell our listeners in the last week what it is we've been watching, what we've been reading, and what we've been listening to. Walt, we'll go to you first. We'll let our guest go last so she can kind of prepare. We'll do the watching first. This could be TV shows, old movies, breaking movies. What have you been watching, Walt?
Well, I binge watched this week Cocaine Cowboys. And you probably see that popping up on your Netflix list of 10 most popular shows. And it is intriguing. It's definitely worth watching. It's a couple of guys in South Florida, Miami area, who on a whim got into the cocaine business and made ridiculous amounts of money. When they finally got arrested, they had $13 million in cash in their attic. And they were like, oh, good, they didn't find most of our money.
Now you know where they laundered that money.
from the
13 million, you know where they found it.
Yes, they did. So that's definitely worth watching. I was a little skeptical at first, but it's really, really good. That's Cocaine Cowboys.
Okay.
I started watching again Santa Clarita Diet. If you've never watched that, it's a few years old, but it's really hilarious, great comedy. And then I stumbled across one of my favorite all-time movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Hell yeah.
Is on Netflix this month. So watch that yesterday. And
you're my hero, Ferris.
Still makes me laugh every single time. That is such a great movie.
It's fantastic. It's the 80s tropes and everything in there, but it still holds up as far as I'm concerned. We showed it to our daughters and they didn't like it as much as Breakfast Club. They identify with Breakfast Club a little bit more. But I think anything John Hughes has ever written is gold. So
yeah,
I agree.
My teenager loves John Hughes movies.
They're all good.
Yeah, they're all really good and timeless. They really are timeless.
They really are.
Considering that they all dress like that again, it's
what my daughters thought was interesting when we started watching Breakfast Club is they were really kind of rolling their eyes. They're like, this looks like a made-for-TV movie. This is old. But when they started to get into the dialogue, they said, okay, we don't use those same terms, but we identify with all those same clicks.
Yeah, exactly. He really hits it on that.
He nails it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you're watching?
Yeah, but those are good for now.
All right.
In other words, I don't want to tell you guys because I don't want to incriminate myself.
I'm spending a lot of money on OnlyFans sponsorships, I guess.
Exactly.
$13 million.
$13 million to be exact.
A lot of fans. All right. So I went to watch the movie. My father-in-law's been visiting for us for a little while, and he's big into horses. My wife grew up with horses up in upstate New York, and I still would love to get horses here. We're going to do that one day. I finally saw the Spielberg flick War Horse. Have you ever seen that?
Oh man, that's one I definitely want to watch. I've not seen that.
I really liked it. There were a couple of moments where I went, okay, this is that sort of hokey fairy tale. Gosh, gee, no, the real world doesn't work this way, but we wish kind of it would. But in general, a really satisfying movie. The World War I attack sequences were fantastic. Typical Spielberg after having shot Saving Private Ryan. I mean, he just knows how to shoot a war scene. But the fact is, this movie is all centered around the adventures of this horse from the time he's born all the way through to the end of the film. It was really engaging.
Gives me Hidalgo vibes. You've seen Hidalgo, right?
Hidalgo's great.
Yeah,
Hidalgo is
that's
great.
what it reminds me of. Yeah.
It's different. And then I read at the end, it was based off of not only a book, but a stage play first. I'm thinking, how in the hell was this a stage play? You got a horse, but it was. So I would check it out if you have not seen it. It's typical Spielberg, very, very well directed. I'm going to stick to two of my many YouTube channels that I like to watch. I only caught two this week, but I saw all of the reactions from Ashleigh Burton. She did Mad Max Fury Road, and Popcorn in Bed, which is the other YouTube channel, did a reaction to Mad Max Fury Road, which led me to rewatch Mad Max Fury Road. I have gotten so addicted. There's so many crappy shows on TV. I actually find it more interesting to spend 25 minutes watching somebody watch a movie and tell me whether or not they liked it and react to it for the very first time. The one girl, Ashleigh, is a millennial. She's only 27 in Tennessee. She's got that country girl's twang, and she is very, very funny. Popcorn in Bed is a little bit, she's from Canada. She's a little sweeter and nicer, having only grown up watching rom-coms. So now she's stretching herself, and both of them loved Mad Max Fury Road. And of course, it is one of the all-time best movies ever made. So if you've never seen Mad Max, the
Canadian has it got a country twang?
No, they're not the Canadian. No.
Okay. I just want to clarify that.
Sorry, she's got a Canadian twang.
So millennials, from the generation that gave you Mystery Science Theater 3000, you're welcome.
There you go.
Because that's where that came from.
Since we're talking films and things you're watching, Kerry, what about this past week? Anything that you would throw to the audience of things that you're watching?
So I'm boring when I don't watch a whole lot of stuff. My husband and I are huge. My husband is a historian. He's a researcher. We love history, and I teach about it. So we rewatched for the third time Turn, the series Turn. And I don't know if any of you have seen this, but if you haven't,
the Revolutionary War.
It's about George Washington's spies. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things I want to say when I watch some of these shows is that I love, because I'll hit it just to see. And it's always one of the first things that pops up as a name, which means that other people have obviously watched the show and have gone in to do research on these people. So this time, because it was our third time watching it, I was able to really to get into some of the nuance of some of the people that were lesser known names during the Revolutionary War, and dig through to find some of their backstory and so on and so forth. So, we love that show. We watched that. And of course, like I said, we're watching The Walking Dead again. This is the set. I mean, that's a lot, right? There's a lot. And we binge watch.
You binge, yeah.
But with Walking Dead, I mean, the joke in the house is that we're now watching it for analysis purposes and prep purposes, like to, break it down, what's right, what they do right, what they do wrong, and, this kind of thing. But the one thing that always gets me, right? So for my zombie people out there, or my horror movie people, or whatever, but particularly zombies, why can't directors get the span from when they turn into zombies consistent? It irritates the crap out of me. So I can filter myself sometimes, right? Because oh my God, that person, because you want them to turn 30 seconds, but it takes this person 3 days. You know what I mean? Come on, man. But the one thing that really gets me in the gun, and this is the joke, he's thinking about my friend that's in the industry. And clearly they didn't have a consultant in the first 6 seasons or whatever, because they're all cross draw carrying, you know what I mean? I'm what is that? They're all cross draw carrying in this. So it's
looks
funny
cooler.
It does. Well, does it though? Well, So, but yeah. So we've been having fun. And I have a friend that works in special effects makeup in Hollywood, and he does all that kind of stuff. And so my daughter was she was never afraid of that as a kid. So she watched it even when she was little. She's like, "That's bacon." You know what I mean? And all this kind of stuff, when they're, so, because it's interesting to go back and watch that a second time with a different perspective and kind of where we are with this virus thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
So, but it's interesting to watch kind of the, breakdown, I don't know, just the human nature of it and stuff. I know this heavy, you guys are watching super funny stuff, and I'm over here with all this.
No,
stuff.
I was I think so was Walt, a huge Walking Dead fan until I think maybe after they got rid of Rick, or technically got rid of Rick. And then we tried to watch the next season.
Season 10.
I got tired of it. I'm this is just dumb. It became dumb.
Yeah, and of course, right, Michonne is looking for him now or whatever. And then they did that other show. Now, The Fear of the Walking Dead, I actually liked that. I was enjoying that for a while, and obviously that's kind of gone.
I watched that for 3 seasons, and then I kind of ducked out.
That's the one that when 4th season came back kind of decent when they brought Morgan, right? They brought Morgan over into that one, but that dude's a great actor just in general. And then they brought out this other bridge one which is an interesting theory, and I think the theory is great. And I don't know if it's just that the trend of zombies is dead. Right. And we're back to vampire. You know how this kind of goes in cycles with horror movies, but I think they need to revisit it at some point. I think it may have just been too soon. It is the children, right? I forget what it's called, but it's 10 years after. And it's the kids that were babies born right after it kicked off within the first couple of years. And it's them now living in these societies that were rebuilt. And the concept was great, but these actors were painful. So I couldn't watch it. But if I had to tell you guys anything, watch. If you've not seen Turn, watch it. If you watched it once, watch it again, because there's a lot of fact in there, and there's a lot of little nuance that's in there that is really, really good about the spies, but particularly about the women. I think that on the surface of it, we look at the main characters and whatever, but really the impact that the women had, and then how they were treated. Even though that they were literally the core of it, right? I mean, the women, right, were the core of that whole aspiring, couldn't do it without them, yet they were still treated substantially. It's just kind of interesting. And also, I've not watched this. We watch it all the time, probably once a year. But if for those of you that really want to understand a lot of, if you don't like to read, you want to understand about Abigail Adams, watch the John Adams miniseries. It is phenomenal and 100% accurate.
Okay. Reading, Walt. I think you and I are going to be short on this one again with my father-in-law visiting, and as much has been going on, I haven't had as much reading time as I've wanted. So I'm going to tell you right now, I've got nothing new. What about you?
I have been, I've been reading a couple things. We've talked about that Star Trek book a couple times, but also I did pick up Don't Make Me Pull Over a few weeks ago when we had Stephanie Stuckey on. And that is a really fun book if you lived through the 70s and ever did a family road trip. So check that out. It's called Don't Make Me Pull Over.
I like that.
Which we have
Great name.
all heard if we've ever been on a family trip. You got it.
Don't make me come back there.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
my
great.
mom just reached back and popped us. Like there was no, clearly the timeout generation is not as well disciplined as the beat your ass generation.
No, and the no seatbelt generation.
Yeah, exactly.
My dad had a magic arm. He could reach into the far back of the car and just punch us.
Right.
And just it was amazing.
Yes.
That's right.
All right. Kerry, what about you? You said you wanted to mention a book. What would you recommend? What are you reading?
So there's a book I'd like to recommend. I've just recommended it to someone to read. I read it a while back, but since it's fresh in my mind, Dearest Friend is actually great. One of our most solid and pieces of or evidence that we have from the Revolutionary War was actually Abigail Adams and John Adams were big on preserving their letters, his documents. He was big on that, right? So some of the best documentation that we have of the Revolutionary War is actually from Abigail Adams. And one of my favorite stories that she tells in Dearest Friend is about the women who come to find out, right? So she's out on the farm, right? She's left Boston and left their home in Boston to go live on their farm. But she caught word that the women in town found out that one of the local shopkeepers had been hoarding coffee. And the women in town, right? Because we at this point, even a couple of years after the Boston Tea Party, we were still that's why we drink coffee in here more than tea. That's a cultural thing that stuck with us for a couple hundred. So they found out that the coffee was being hoarded. The women literally created a mob, went into town, drugged this guy out, beat the shit out of him, and stole his coffee. And so this is what I love about it, though, with Abigail and all of her strong, femininity, but also her sensibilities, in this very English proper, I just can't imagine that the ladies would be so improper to do. I'm like, oh no, those ladies beat the shit out of that guy. And you know what I mean? I think that was a little dissonance on her part. I absolutely believe that. There's a book called Revolutionary Mothers. And this book is phenomenal to help understand the women of the Revolutionary War. And not just because it's right, we won the war, right? So of course we tell it in this glamorized, glorious fashion, because that's what you do, right? And for right or wrong. But the woman that wrote this book, I think it was in the late 90s, I'd have to look up the name of it, but her name, she tells the story from all the different perspectives. And so one of them is the loyalist woman. One of them is the camp follower women and how they were treated and what the perception of them was versus the life that they lived, versus the women in the country, versus the patriot women and what they did. And my favorite piece of it, though, one of my favorite pieces of it, though, Rebecca Mott is probably one of my favorites because she burned down her own house to keep the loyalists from having it. I'm like, how, like, a lot of y'all call yourselves patriots till it's time to do patriot shit. Because let's be honest, would you really burn down your house? Rebecca Mott, they would have said, well, you know, you don't want them to have your house and crops. She's like, give me the arrow. Like, she did it herself. Like, right? And unless you're willing to do that, don't talk to me. So so the Native Americans, so she tells the story of the Native Americans. And then she tells the slaves, the black slaves and stuff. There's not a lot in there on that, unfortunately, because not a lot of information. But what a lot of people don't realize about Native Americans is that they're very matriarchal, right? Especially the old. And so both sides wanted the Native American women to fight, right? Because they knew the land, right? They're not the women, but they wanted the Native Americans because the tribes, because they knew the land and the language, you know, they could use their language and stuff. But the men of the tribes were like, you gotta talk to the women. And both sides, right? Both the Continental Army and the British were like, what do you mean we have to talk to the women? What do you mean women? And they're like, you want us to fight? You got to talk. What do they know? They don't know anything. And they're like, they rule the roost, man. I mean, essentially is what it is. And so I love that they're like, nah, man, like, you got to talk to when the ladies say go, we go. Otherwise, we're here. And these men were just appalled that they had to go grovel to these women back then. And I'm like,
that's cool to hear stories like that and get the actual perspectives. Because I think sometimes we get a version in our history books in middle school and high school, and we don't necessarily get the accurate view of history.
Right. And you certainly don't get it from those other perspectives, especially from a group of people that, I mean, you know, historically, not to be, you know, Debbie Downer, but we weren't necessarily the greatest of natives, right? So, I mean, of course, so you don't get to hear a lot of that side of it. So I like that book. It's one of those books that you can pick up and just, because of how it's compartmentalized out, you don't have to read it all the way through. You can kind of pick up and read here and there. But I really enjoy that book. I just referred it to somebody this week, so it's fresh in my mind. But check that one out. I think y'all will like that one.
All right. And as we are cruising through our final piece of the entertainment segment, Walt, what are you listening to?
Well, a few that I will recommend is a podcast I think we've talked about before called This Won't Hurt a Bit. And it's a couple of doctors talking about all kinds of different medical stuff. So people will send in a question, you know, hey, I've got, you know, phlebitis or whatever. And they kind of approach it from a scientific medical standpoint, but they're also very humorous. So if you're into science and medicine, and, you know, they've got a couple of more timely things about COVID and things like that, but they are very funny and they have a great approach to things. That's called This Won't Hurt a Bit. I should have mentioned this a while back and I keep forgetting to. There's a podcast called Super Ego, and they do a little bit of what we do where they will take spinoffs down rabbit trails, and some of them work out great. And one of them that they do a lot of improv, but they take classic novels and that they've never read. They read the summary of the characters and then they act it out the way they think it would be. So if you've ever read Wuthering Heights, I know that was one of my favorites, one of my few favorite classic novels in high school that I read. There's a Super Ego forgotten classic on Wuthering Heights that is absolutely hysterical and worth listening to. And that's on basically any podcatcher for free. And then finally, one I've talked about in the past, but I've revisited. He's come out with some new episodes. Mascots. It's on Stitcher Premium, and it is just about mascots. He'll pick a team or a city and bring a guest in who grew up in that city, and they talk about the team mascots and the history of them and how crazy they are and scandals that revolve around them, and like the time that the Philly Fanatic got arrested. And so they get into all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Great show. And like I said, it's only on Stitcher Premium, which kind of sucks, but it's worth it. They've got a lot of great entertaining things on there. So check that out.
All right. I'll go through quickly what I'm listening to. I was told last week I was going digging back into my new age stuff and was playing some Ray Lynch. I went back to Hummingbird 2002. the group that we interviewed earlier this season. Just such a great album. So much fun to listen to. I listened to Pulse by Pink Floyd over and over and over the last few days. Don't ask me why. It just popped in my head. I haven't listened to Pulse in a while. Great live recording. I love watching the videos if you get a chance to see them online. David Gilmour playing guitar with everybody. I mean, those are musicians when they sound as good, if not better, than the studio tracks when they're live. I mean, that's amazing. The Great Escape Minute, the podcast. I've been following that minute by minute. Radio Labyrinth has 2 episodes a week. Been all caught up with that. And 60MW, my buddies across the pond, the 60MW podcast, culture and video games and movies and reviews and a lot of fun. And I get to host a rant show over there. We just had the rant show drop a couple weeks back. So it's a lot of fun. I get to play across the pond with some Brits and chat about things. So those are the things I've been listening to. Kerry, we're going to wrap up with you. Anything you've been listening to?
So I'm listening to, I'm revisiting a bunch of 70s, 80s punk, and my daughter recently had to write a paper and she chose for college, and she chose the difference between American punk versus British punk, and the differences, which obviously one was definitely more about partying, really, as opposed to like the political statements that were being made by the British. And so it's interesting, especially with everything going on right now and stuff. It was just kind of interesting to revisit that. So, I've been revisiting some old punk music. Dead Kennedys and Sex Pistols were not really so much, but there was definitely some very profound statements made that were really seeing almost everything is circular. It seems like, if you really get down to it. Down from the Mountain, always, right? That's constantly in my playlist. Down from the Mountain is the soundtrack from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I saw that live. I was blessed to see that live before the old man, that sings at the end before he passed away. If you don't own that, I can't even understand why you would not have that downloaded. I don't get it. I love old bluegrass. But also podcast wise, I'm not a huge podcast YouTube watcher listener, but I do watch. I'm really into plant and survival medicine, bush medicine. I grow my own herbs and plants. I'm all about being ungovernable, but above and beyond just the piece of that, and like just not wanting pharma. If you're stuck in the woods, you get trapped, right? I mean, did you know that there are certain mosses that you can pack a wound with? You know what I mean? I'm really, really into that. I'm actually, so I've been listening to a couple of those, but another one, because I'm trying to up my medical game, is it's a buddy of mine. His name is Dietrich, and he's called the Skinny Medic. And he is great. He's a big pro 2A guy, big gun guy in the industry, but he's also a paramedic. And he does some really good stuff. And my friend Johnny B, if you guys just want some spicy, he does a lot of gun reviews and stuff, but every Friday he does something called Spicy Friday. And where he just finds memes and just savage stuff from across the internet. And he plays it on so you can go to his YouTube channel, 180-second ideas. But they're pretty funny. Like he pulls up some pretty petty, savage, funny stuff. And so he's a nice one to listen to. I think you guys would get a kick out of him.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've gone way longer than expected. But Kerry, you have given us so much of your time, and we really appreciate you taking time with us. There's obviously so much to cover, and we can't do it all in one episode. So we'll have to have you back in later seasons. Before we sign off ourselves, let us remind everybody again, where can people learn more about you or follow you?
Well, thanks for having me on. And I know I'm a talker, so I knew you wouldn't be short for content. You can find me at We the Female. That's my nonprofit. You can find me across social media platforms, We the Female_official on Instagram, We the Female everywhere else, wethefemale.net. You can also find me, if you're not offended easily, Stilettos and Shotguns. That's where you'll probably find me on Instagram, the most active. I do a lot of education live streams and stuff on there too about how to, become active with reading policy and understanding that. I do a lot of that type of thing. And I think that's, if you want to email me, you have questions about the classes and so on and so forth, info@wethefemale.net. And then stay tuned that in February, we're going to be doing that amazing event in Houston where we're going to be training 250 women and getting them their permits for free with U.S. Lawship.
Excellent. We're going to follow up with that with you as we get closer. And I wish you all the best with
Thank
that.
you.
And hopefully our environment in the country and the world will allow for something like that to take place.
Oh, it will. We're going to make it happen, even if I have to bring them out to my property and do it, because women, this is it, man. Stay strapped. You got to, whatever your choice is, make sure that you stay armed.
Walt, very quickly, for folks that might be joining us for the first time because they're big fans of Kerry and Stilettos and Shotguns, how do they learn more about us?
The best place to learn about us is our website, thewilderride.com. Kind of has everything that you would ever want to know about Alan or I and all of our guests. And where to find them. Also, go to facebook.com/The Wilder Ride. Follow us there, and then a button's going to pop up that says join our listeners group. We've mentioned it before. It's no politics, no any of that kind of nonsense. It's just all entertainment and talking about the podcast and other things in the entertainment world. So check that out. Get escape from reality or whatever it is we live in every day, and gives you the opportunity to find out what's coming up. Plus, you can vote every week for the crappy movie of the week that I'm going to get subjected to. I don't know what it's going to be next week, but I'll put the poll up tomorrow. So
I'm going digging for movies
that.
to send for this. Like, this is going down. Like, you're going to regret me knowing about this. Let's just say that.
I don't think there's a way I could regret more.
Don't tempt worse. Do not tempt
hold
worse.
my bourbon. Watch this.
Folks, if you are out there listening, if this is the first time or if you've been a long time listener, take a second, if you haven't done so already, to rate and review, and more importantly, hit that share button on your podcatcher of choice. Let everybody know that you've been listening to this episode and help us spread the word. We really appreciate it. Podcasters do tend to support one another as opposed to radio. We want to see everybody succeed, so help us out and help the other podcasts out that you might subscribe and listen to. And come back next week. We've got another guest lined up. We get to dive into our good friends over at Radio Labyrinth, a voice and a talent that joined them not long after they launched, but is actually doing a lot to help pull them into the YouTube era, putting a lot of their podcast episodes on video and putting those online. Dustin Lawler is going to be joining us. So come on back next week for a brand new episode of The Wilder Ride Listener's Lounge. Kerry, I am so glad.
Alan, get the dick out of your mouth. And...
Hey! It's a family show.
Oh, but you cut. Oh, we're still recording. Hi. Hey, they're pretty fly for white guys.
I am so glad you felt comfortable and came on, and really appreciate hearing that. Seriously, I think it's important what you do.
Thank you.
I think more people need to keep doing what you're doing to get that word out.
Absolutely.
Nobody needs to choose to be a victim. That is a choice, and I choose not to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.